Hi, and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here we host a distinguished guest, and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran, finding out that the publishing you sold 25 years ago is now owned by the private equity group BlackRock, or else a scrappy upstart trying to sell your publishing in perpetuity to a company that just has a trailer set up on a vacant lot on Demondrian Street, this is your show. Because ultimately, it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey everybody, it's the last Friday of May 2022, and I thank you for joining us. This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. I'm old enough to remember when you had to pay somebody called a web developer to get a website made, and it would always be some guy named Leonard who drove a Subaru Forester with a 20 CD carousel changer in the trunk that only had Tool albums in it, and who was always trying to sell you Tic Tacs that he claimed were downers from Vancouver. And old Leonard would charge you about $1,000 for a website that would be obsolete in 6 months. But it's the future now, you guys. That's not how it works anymore. We're allowed to have nice things now. One of those nice things is Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle powers the websites of tens of thousands of musicians around the world, from weekend warriors to Grammy winners. All the features you need for a professional website are already built in: hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music, and merch commission-free. Listeners to the Working Songwriter podcast can go to bandzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Use the promo code TWS, the initials of our show, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. If you would like to hear some of my music live in the coming weeks, the first Sunday night of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm over on YouTube for Sunday Songs. That's a live stream. I'm live. I'm playing tunes live. I'm taking questions in the live chat. I'm taking requests in the live chat. It's a really fun, really interactive experience. I dare to say that we're building something of a community over there, including many people who are listeners to this podcast. So come on over and be a part of it. That's the first Sunday night of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern over on YouTube. Head on over to joepugmusic.com and click on the live stream tab to set a reminder. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, here's a couple things that you could do to help. First, you could become a supporter of the show over at Patreon. Patreon is a platform that allows you to directly support creative endeavors that you find meaningful. You just head to their site, Patreon. You search for The Working Songwriter, or you search for my name. Then you sign up to kick in a few bucks every month for the show. Think of it as a voluntary subscription. A subscription that you certainly don't have to pay for, but that you choose to pay for because you dig the show and because you won't miss a few bucks at the end of every month. If just 1% of our listenership would kick in the price of a cup of coffee every month, it would make an immense difference. So thank you to everybody who's taken the time and capital to contribute in that way. I very much appreciate it. If you're not in a place where you can contribute in that way, it's totally understandable, but there's still a few ways that you could help out for free. First, you could leave us a rating in the iTunes store, or second, you could simply tell a friend about the show. The simple math on those two things is that they will help me much more than they will be a pain in the ass for you. Okay, I'll end all the harassment there. I very much hope you enjoy this chat with Rob. Our guest this week originally hails from Memphis, but has run all over the American South for the last 10 years making music. Rob Baird got his start as a staff writer for Carnival Music, the publishing house of music producer Frank Liddell in Nashville. Since then, he's focused on building a solo career as an artist and has relocated to Texas. He has shared the stage with Billy Joe Shaver, Ryan Bingham, Nathaniel Rateliff, and many others. His songs have appeared on network television shows for NBC, ABC, and Paramount, including Yellowstone and Nashville. Americana Highways says that his voice creates irresistible emotional resonance. The Austin Chronicle has lauded him for his sharp melodies and tense lyrics. And Spin Magazine says that he takes traditional country to a deeper place. I caught up with Rob on the phone a few weeks ago to hear about his journey so far. Rob Baird, thanks so much for being a part of the Working Songwriter Podcast. I appreciate it, man. You grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, from what I can tell. What did music look like around your household growing up?
Man, Memphis is an interesting place when it comes to music. I think it's just kind of in the city, in the bones of the city. So I grew up in Memphis and kind of started recognizing like all the history and all the great music that's been made in Memphis. And it was just really interesting to discover it because I'm not from a really particularly musical family, but my grandfather was a big influence on me, and he dropped like a Tom Waits record off, Mule Variations, on my bed at like 13, and was like, figure this out. And so that started to really get some wheels turning in my mind about songwriters and all kinds. I mean, most 13-year-olds aren't listening to Big in Japan.
Yeah, no, not even close. Yeah, most 13-year-olds aren't listening to like the earlier Tom Waits albums, which are a little bit easier to make heads or tails of, much less Mule Variations.
No, it took me a while to like those records after
that one.
I was like, this isn't as shocking, particularly. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started in Memphis. And yeah, it's a really fun place to be from. And we ended up making a record there this past year, so that was super rad.
Yeah, I mean, what's really cool about Memphis, it was like a really homegrown type of sound that came out of there. There's no reason why it necessarily should have been a music mecca, I guess. Or maybe it should have been because there was a ton of people, there was a whole musical culture in Mississippi that came up to a place that had the technology to record it. I'm not sure. But, I mean, so were you aware of like, the Sam Phillips recording and stuff like those type of studios there when you were growing up, or not until later in life?
Man, I mean, definitely Sun Records, and then you get into Stax, right? Like, I mean, just on your normal down, like I'd go to my dad's office downtown with him when I was a kid, and you would look over and there's Sun Records just sitting right there. And it's just so strangely just like built into the culture of Memphis, and obviously Stax, and then later I've gone and hung out and done some stuff at Sam Phillips. I mean, that room's incredible. And I think there's a lot of really cool rooms, Royal Studios with Boo Mitchell in Memphis that are super, I don't want to say underutilized, but we recorded this record at Ardent Studios, and I don't think anybody's made a record since COVID or pre-COVID or past COVID there, which is crazy. But Memphis, it was cool, man. I'm really glad that I grew up there, to be honest.
It's also a city, I feel like over like the last 10 or 15 years of touring myself, and I'm sure that you've noticed this as well with all the touring that you've done, a lot of cities have started to look like a little bit more homogenous, especially like near where you play the gig. You know what I mean? They all tend to be kind of, single pour over coffee shop, this, that, and the other. And every time I visit Memphis, I feel like I could be there. It doesn't feel like I'm in the 70s, but it definitely feels like I could be in 1997, in Memphis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, for sure. Like, I almost have trouble finding a coffee shop. I was there a couple of weeks ago doing a show in Oxford and ended up staying in Memphis, and like I was trying to find the like shamefully find the coffee shop, the Pour Over coffee shop. And I was like, oh, it's not here. Wake up, man. Remember where you're from. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like, there's not like a lot of new restaurants and things happening. As Memphis is developing, I think a lot of people are moving there, but I mean, it's ingrained and it's got its culture. And after as much time I spent in Nashville, I think I love that part of Memphis that, you know, like there's a biscuit place on Summer Avenue that I have to go to, and they're like $2, you know, just like, okay.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring up Nashville there, though, because I think what I just said right there could have applied to Nashville in like 2009 or 2011. And obviously it doesn't apply to Nashville anymore because it's been Nashville's completely turned over with a lot of development. So the question is, in this post-COVID world, is that what Memphis looks like 7 or 8 years from now? And I'm not sure one way or the other.
I'm not sure either, but I think it will slowly, you know, move to the new ways, but it'd probably keep its character. That is funny you say about Nashville. I mean, 2010 is about right when I started going to Nashville, and I mean it's almost unrecognizable from what it is now. It's just unbelievable. And I go every, I don't know, sometimes a couple weeks, every couple months, and the city of Nashville will literally just like sprout up and change, and it's unbelievable.
It will. Oh, man, people are going to get so angry at me hearing me bust on Nashville like this. But last time I was in there, I went there for some sort of conference or something. And and not all parts of the city are like this, but a lot of parts of the city now, I feel like I'm walking inside of like one giant Airbnb. You know what I mean? With just like, you know, like a fluorescent sign that just says hello in cursive on it.
Yeah, and just Nashville, like, yeah, I mean, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And then there's like a tractor connected to a trailer that has a hot tub in it, and just it's going down the road. And I'm like, okay. And inevitably, I would be stuck behind that hot tub in my 1990 F-150 that didn't have any air conditioning. I'd just be like,
right,
it's going to be a long day.
It
and
is.
I hope. I fear for the people in that hot tub. Like, you're not coming out clean of that deal.
No chance. So when did, you said your pop drops, mule variations on your bed when you're about 13 years old. You're kind of into it. You dig it. When does music start looking like something that it's not going to be something that you just, enjoy and consume, but something that you're going to start making yourself?
Yeah, man. I mean, I was sneaking around playing bars in Memphis. Like, I think my mom and parents know this. Not that I care anymore since I'm 35, but I would go out with my best bud Sam and go to these bars and like play in between sets of like these soul singers and try to get stage experience. There really wasn't any real way. Like, I guess you could play in like the high school talent show, but I don't think I was too scared to do that. But I was kind of always scratching out songs and thinking about music and writing music and kind of writing songs in my head. And then I went to TCU because I grew up working on these ranches out west in Mississippi, and I went for ranch management, which is very glad I'm not a ranch manager, because the artificial insemination class was what terrified me. They were like, baby, it's full glow. Like the secretary told me that. I was like, okay, cool. But somewhere in that realm, I started playing at this place called the Aardvark. You ever played there in Fort Worth?
No, I haven't. Mm-mm.
It was like a college bar. It's now a church, which is very confusing. The college bar, like everybody's smoking cigarettes in there. And you kind of get your like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like everybody kind of had a residency. And so I showed up there. And then, of course, you get your college friends to come out. So it was all kind of based on, like, how many people can you get out to the show? And I think I did one cover set with the bass player, the acoustic. That's a great sound, Joe. The electric bass plugged in directly. And
right into the board.
Yeah, right into the board. It sounds great. But I was kind of immediately bored by playing cover songs. And then 2 weeks later, I'd put together a band and started, like, writing as much as I had no idea what I was doing. and then ended up making a record in college that's no longer out under the guise of Rob Baird and the Whiskey Reunion, which was created in a Google or some type of band name generator. And luckily, those guys ended up being attorneys. And then I met, do you know Scott Davis? I'm sure you do.
Of course I know Scott, yeah.
Yeah. Scott, I found Scott, love Scott still to this day. And he and the Hayes Carl guys had just gotten off of Letterman with Trouble in Mind, and got really lucky and went and made a record with him. And that kind of kick-started my music career, for better or worse.
Yeah. What did you learn from that initial experience with Scott? Because he had a fair amount of experience at that point, and it sounds like, you were just getting started. You were pretty green.
He was patient, man. I'd come up with some pretty decent songs, I guess, a couple of them at least. And then, really didn't know what I was doing. But he's a patient guy. And we made this record down in Lockhart. It's really cool studio this guy Stephen Collins owns. I mean, it was just definitely a process. And your friend, the click track when you're very young is not your friend. And it was really strange. I was talking to these guys at Carnival recording company and publishing in Nashville, and I kind of figured out, you got to write something unique, hopefully, to yourself. I understood that idea. I didn't really understand how to do it. And they told me basically, like, go make a record. If it's good, we'll help you a lot. And if it's bad, we'll not help you, which is very Music Row.
Right.
And I ended up sending it to them, and then they signed me when I was still in college, which I thought was normal. And I was like, oh, let's go do this. And they're going to, pay you like $10,000 a year, and I have a job. And then I ended up on Music Row just getting my ass handed to me by all these great songwriters, which was invaluable, but took a while to figure that thing out.
Right. So in that case, they kind of signed you and brought you on specifically for like the publishing, and they wanted you to maybe write for other people, certainly with other people.
And they gave me a record deal too, I guess, to put out my records. I mean, this is 2010. I think that's my first like real record came out. We were still selling CDs, those were the days. Yeah.
I know. Every release now it comes up. I'm like, can I not press CDs? And someone's always just like, nah, there's still some people that buy them. But I can't. I can't stand having to pay for those.
It feels very. It's very strange. And so you might as well just throw some money, I don't know, down the drain. I mean, I'd love to sell CDs if I could.
I'm waiting for hipsters 15 years from now to be like, it like the same way that people talk about vinyl now, where they'll just be like, on CDs, it just sounds a little bit better, man. Just really, it's not like streaming. You got to get that CD sound going.
Yeah, that crisp CD sound. Oh, man.
So they bring you up to Nashville, and they start setting up writing appointments for you that you said, like, you got your ass handed to you. Like, what does that look like in the context of a writing room?
I mean, there was two things happening, which I'm very grateful for. You're writing with like kind of some of the older, like OG Music Row guys, and Music Row was still, obviously in kind of full swing back then. And also, like, Brent Cobb had just showed up on the scene and was writing at Carnival, and we're still buddies. And like Adam Hood and all the guys that, it's kind of surreal because I've been listening to Adam Hood's music for 5 or 6 years and just walk in the office and he's like, oh, hi, buddy. What are you doing? Hi, I'm Adam Hood. And it's like, okay. And we all ended up staying at this Best Western hotel that was right next to the BMI building, which had yet to be redone. It was quite a scene. But yeah, man, you end up with somebody like a Odie Blackman or some of these great songwriters that have written songs that I had loved, and that was cool. But I don't know how much perspective I necessarily had, or felt a little bit intimidated. But I ended up writing with this guy named Rick Brantley, who I still work with today. He's one of my best friends, and he had a canceled writing appointment and was sitting outside smoking a cigarette. And I walked downstairs and had a canceled writing appointment. And we went upstairs and finished the song I'd started. And then ended up writing pretty much like a handful, especially at that time, all the songs that I ended up cutting. So it just kind of had its way of working out. But man, some of those days you're like writing with songwriters that really knew what they were doing. And then I would show up with like my pen and my pad. And like, dude, good luck, man. You have no perspective, you know?
Wait, now, was there a culture of dudes like that, like trying to big time you basically? Like if you're a younger guy or?
I mean, I think everything's happened, man. I had some funny run-ins, but like I also had some people that are still friends to this day. I think Music Row back then was so competitive to get cuts too, because I mean, this is all pre-Florida Georgia Line, and like basically my Music Row songwriting career, when those dudes hit, which strangely enough, I've spent some time with those guys, and I enjoy hanging out with them. They have a different life view than I do. They really like Fireball for real, or at the time they did. But those guys kind of hit, and that changed the whole thing. And
really, in what way?
Man, it's like I think everybody was pushing for like more of those. I don't want to say classic, but that era of song was very much like the songwriter's gonna write it. I don't think the artists have gotten involved as much. That's kind of started happening, you know, and the artist is in the room and they're getting credit, and then those guys kind of came and flipped the whole thing on its head, and we're kind of like, we wrote these songs, no one thought this was going to work, and now they're the biggest band in Music Row. And I don't think it's a secret that if something starts working like that in Nashville, then people start gravitating towards doing that thing, you know?
100%. It kind of reminds me of like sometimes you hear guys who are in hair metal bands, they talk about like the BC and the AD it was with like when Nirvana came out. It's like, man, there were like one festival season, we were on top of the world, and then Nirvana came out and there weren't any festivals for us the next year. Like that's it.
Over. Yeah, totally, you know? Man. I don't know if it was like that dramatic, but I definitely think there were some artists probably sitting in their agent's office being like, what happened, man?
Well, tell me a little bit more. I now want to know, you slipped in the detail of everyone, you know, staying at an unfinished Best Western next to the BMI building. I mean, Did that just like, it's funny, like you weren't even like renting a house or something like that. You're just like in a hotel. Like that's pretty old school, man.
Yeah, it was funny, man. I mean, I remember getting there. They had these gold sheets at the Best Western that were like, I mean, you were like, wow, this whole room, it's just got, you know, it didn't feel like the palace that they had presented, but I guess that was pretty standard for Adam and Brent and I all to be there at the same time, which inevitably we'd all check in and then like go down to the red door and then check out, which was fun until it wasn't. But yeah, man, it was old school. I moved there in 2014. I think they kind of put the final kibosh on me going back and forth. I think they got tired of paying for it.
Yeah.
And I did a year there, and that was about the Florida Georgia Line time. And so I felt very like I was not in a demand in any way as a songwriter. So I guess that was a good lesson. That's probably the height of, you know how in your career you have that 1 year that really sucked. That was my year that really sucked. I was in Nashville and I had no idea what I was doing there, but I wasn't on the road really, which I missed. And so, but it all worked out.
Well, so what were you doing, you know, like all jokes aside of, you know, being like the younger guy and getting your ass handed to you there, like what did you notice that you were doing writing wise and composition wise that you were very competent at, that you could add to rights? Like what do you think your wheelhouse then and now is as a songwriter?
Man, like I think back then I was trying to figure out like anything who you want to be, right? And so I'm trying to get my chops up. I mean, what I'm trying to do now as a songwriter, and hopefully those times help me develop, is kind of have your own unique point of view. Obviously, I still want to write something that I know that's authentic to me and why I'm writing it and what might be experience, or I mean, generally it ends up about my experiences, maybe inadvertently, or I don't really set out to do that. And then Melody wise, it's really what I'm trying to come up with. I start with melody and then try to work backwards with lyrics generally and just feel like, I'm really lucky to have great musicians playing on my records now and great studios. And so, man, I kind of just, I want to rock more than I used to. I've made a lot of sad songs. I'm kind of tired of being so sad, but I think I was sad back then.
That's one of the great advantages of being, a decade or two in is, so one of the disadvantages of being a decade or two into music is it's really hard to get people to listen to your new record because it's just like, all right, well, that's the fifth album by that guy I like, It's not the first album and it's not the last one. But one of the real advantages, in my opinion, in which you just alluded to, is you can finally get guys and gals who can actually play the shit out of their instruments to play on your stuff. And it makes such a big difference to be able to put in that phone call, have them answer the phone call, have them show up at the session. It makes all the difference in the world, actually.
Yeah, man, it's so much fun. And then engineer wise too. I mean, I've worked with a lot of great people, but I don't know, even just to have the engineer to have an assistant, which is, I think, sometimes helps the whole thing because there's only so many details that one person can pay attention to. But yeah, it's been really fun, man. I'm sure Jed Hughes. Jed was a writer at Carnival, and then eventually 10 years later we circle back, and he's just an absolute beast of a guitar player and a great human. And he's played on 2 records for me, and it's just yeah, mate. I had 2 Australians and 1 British guy on my record, and the talkback mic would come through, and you're like, which one is it?
Right. No, totally.
It's just so great, man. I love making records. That's my favorite part of this whole thing, for sure.
Well, so if you say 2014 was kind of your lost year there, or whatever it was, that first year in Nashville, it sounds like you made a conscious decision at that point to kind of move away from focusing on the writer's room, for other people and for a publishing company, and really start focusing some time and attention on your career as an artist. So how did you begin to do that? And how did you put one foot in front of the other, so to speak, to get that going again?
Well, I mean, I quit, which helped. I was
okay.
Yeah, I went in there and I was just like, this isn't going to work. And then I didn't want to spend any more time in writers' rooms, man. I don't think writing songs, at least for me, and some people are great at writing in the morning. Like writing at 10 o'clock in a nebulous room somewhere on the back of some music room building just kind of seemed like this isn't going to work for me. So I came back to Texas and I didn't know what to do for a month. I was working on songs and I ended up meeting this guy named Brian Douglas Phillips, and we made a record in his garage. He's built out a studio, and with kind of my band guys, and I couldn't afford to take the band out that much. So I did that. And then I went and played 100 shows acoustic at the Eddie's Attics of the world.
Yep.
And, I kind of had some stage fright when I was young too. And I just didn't really know how to handle a band and a crowd at the same time. So this kind of solved all that because I had to get up there with the guitar alone. And how it goes, just deliver the goods. And sometimes it's not, maybe your delivery of your song isn't as good, but you can get away with telling a story or a joke or something that hopefully wins the crowd over. And that was super useful for me. And honestly, that's about all I could afford to do without label support, was just to go make a record in this garage. And luckily everybody worked their asses off and really cared and made it a great record. And Run of Good Luck is still my biggest song on Spotify, and we did it in 3 hours, which is mind blowing.
Funny how that works, man. Because and I'm sure you've had this experience too, where you spend 1,000,000 hours writing another song and 1,000,000 hours recording it. You record it 5 different ways. This, that, and the other costs you a bunch of money, a bunch of time, and then no one listens to that fucking song on Spotify whatsoever.
I know. Yeah. That's the whole lesson of the whole thing, man. Especially when you think you've got it nailed and all this effort was so worth it. And then it was just no, dude, I can see right through that.
Yeah.
The crowd or the public never seems to lie. They know as a whole.
It's funny too, hearing you talk about, just saying look, I made this record. didn't have money to take a band out, so we're going to go do a couple hundred shows, solo acoustic at the Andy's Attics of the world. It's like, I think that there's something really to that, because I think that's not an easy thing to do, and I think it weeds people out real quick. A lot of people can, put together a few $1,000 to put an album together, and anyone can start a fucking Instagram profile and then upload it to Spotify. But the moment that you got to go on the road and put it in front of people and win listeners, I mean, that can be like not a lot of fun for for like long periods of time.
It definitely is. You have like 1 out of 4 wins sometimes that week. Like,
yeah.
And what is a win? But maybe that's just getting the crowd. But if you're in a Wednesday and I don't know, Knoxville, which I remember that one specifically. It's like, okay, why am I here? And you're alone most of the time, and then you sling your own birch. And I don't know. I think I look back like most things where I'm sure you can relate. Like most things we do that seemed so painful at the time. I see some of those bands I was touring with doing really well now, and they're in the same boat, and some of them are gone, but it all just kind of makes sense because that was what the only thing to do was then. It was,
Yes. To me, one of the hardest times in that period that you're talking about there is in your 20s, it's really cool. And if you stick with it in your mid-30s and on, it gets to be really cool again because you've built something. And if you haven't built something, you're not around anymore. You're doing something different. But if you've stuck it through and it's still going, you've built something, and now it's fun again. But the weird part, which I think you're kind of talking about there, it's like late 20s, early 30s, when you're still trying to figure out if it's going to work. You start talking to all your friends who have normal jobs, and you're like, wait, you own a house now? Like, that's a thing? I'm in Knoxville on a Wednesday night, staying at another Best Western, and you own a house? How does that work? Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, you got a great wife, like everything seems good, and then here I am, like, just trying to figure out if we can make this Band-Aid work. No, totally, dude. I mean, you can't really say no back then either. You gotta have to take every opportunity. And that's where it gets kind of grindy on you because you start doing things for money that you don't really want to do, which is, you're lucky to have it. And you can save the money and the shekels and put it back into things you want to do. But like, it's still just getting your ass handed to you on a consistent basis. I think that's not only to musicians, that's actors and comedians and everything else. But like, yeah, I mean, I'm finally hitting the point. You're right. Like at 35 this year, it's finally getting, I don't know, it's getting nice. It's getting more fun and to play with the band. And I try not to I don't tour as much as I used to. I've had this weird vocal thing going on, COVID and bronchitis and all that stuff. And I think I'm almost over it. I'm trying to get back out of it. But like, yeah, we tour when it makes sense. I'm not a big fan of losing thousands of dollars to go to, middle of nowhere as much as I want to. But every once in a while you take a show and you're like, this is going to be fun. We're going to go back up to Bozeman and play live from the Baird, which I'm sure you've done before or know those guys. And that's always like I'm not going to make a bunch of money, but hell yeah, let's fucking do it. This is going to be fun.
Getting better at your instrument is an essential part of being a songwriter. When you play better guitar, you write better songs. It's that simple. How do you do that, though? Sure, you could get lessons from the neighbor who majored in dotted triplets at Princeton, but that'll cost you dearly. Or else, you could just pull up YouTube and pay nothing at all, but then you'll end up sifting through videos of nerds unironically weeping as they silently read the tablature to the guitar solo from Bohemian Rhapsody. What's the sweet spot in between? Peghead Nation, the online home for American roots music. They feature curated video workshops with world-class instructors on guitar, mandolin, banjo, fiddle, upright bass, dobro, and ukulele. They have levels of instruction that meet the needs of both scrappy upstarts and grizzled veterans, And most importantly, all of it comes in at a low monthly subscription that actual strapped-for-cash songwriters can easily afford. To start taking classes yourself, head on over to pegheadnation.com to check out their 50 available courses and enter the promo code TWS to get your first month free. You can also send a gift subscription to the songwriter in your life or to the player in your band who needs a not-so-subtle hint about their playing prowess. Peghead Nation. When you play better guitar, you write better songs. It's that simple. It sounds like Rob's entire time in Nashville, he felt like a bit of an outsider. And how could he not? Living in a hotel next to your gig doesn't exactly engender the feeling of putting down roots in Mayberry. But every time I've been there in Nashville, and I've been there a lot to work, there is a surreal quality to it. And I'm not just talking about the bachelorette party pedal pubs that have become ubiquitous in the last 10 years. There's still a vaudeville vibe to Nashville, something very old school show business that makes it feel like something other than real life. And there's a wonderful poem by Carol Oles that gets to that feeling. It's entitled, In Nashville. The aging country music star makes his comeback every night at 9. His jokes are ethnic, and he kisses nervous housewives on the cheek between numbers. They blush like virgins. Just to show how upright this fun is, he brings a real one, Daddy's little girl, into the act. He flirts and bends his face for her to kiss. What could be more innocent than that? While he sings his countless tears, he counts on theirs. Couples dance too close for strangers. If his songs are true, they'll leave this place together. Be good. Get another chance. The married ones won't divorce. At tables outside the spotlight, folks look on in pairs, in groups, and all alone. The hostess serves another round of bourbon. Someone wonders how the darkened room appears by day. Someone tilts toward home. Travelers feel this is the town they come from. Forget who waits with radio turned low. They tell secrets they won't know tomorrow when they wake. Tongues raw and dry.
So talk to me about this most recent record. As you mentioned, you returned to Memphis to make this one. You went to Ardent Studios. How did this one come together, and why did you end up back in Memphis at Ardent to make the record there?
Well, Joe, it's a little confusing. So, like, when COVID started, I kind of have a mentor friend that I call Uncle Flannery, and Uncle Flannery called me. He talks like this. He's like, Rob, you gotta get ahead. Gotta get ahead right now. It was like 2 weeks into COVID. So we started working on a record. I think we've released 5 singles and it comes out May 19th. That's called Anthems. And and we did that at Sound Emporium, Room B, which was super cool with like Jed and this crew of dudes. And
that's in Nashville, Sound Emporium.
We did that in Nashville. I love Sound Emporium. Cowboy Jack Clement, an old Memphis staple that owned that. And I think we really got a chance to, just with it being COVID, kind of like explore what that record was going to be and really record a lot of stuff. And the band was just, and the funny part is between Rick and I, we were making the record together. He's producing. Everybody in the room was either a great friend of his, a great friend of mine, or both. And so we've all played together on the road, and you know that feeling. And so it's kind of the family deal. And then we finished that record, and COVID's still going on. And I got an opportunity to talk to the guys in Memphis, Jody from Big Star, and I wanted to go re-record some of the songs that I made back in the Scott Davis era when I was a young buck and didn't have much confidence. And so we took this band, same group of dudes, same engineer, and ran down to Memphis for 3 days and redid all the songs that I wanted to do that we had a big whiteboard and went through it all. And so that's going to come out after probably like 2 months, or start coming out after this record comes out May 19th. So I have 2 records coming out essentially.
I think that's the way to no, but listen, I think that's the way to do it. I think in the new streaming economy, I think shots at the basket is the way to go in this day and age.
I think so, man. I really took me a minute, and I'm sure for you the same thing, of kind of adjusting to the single model, but it's kind of knocked out a lot of the bullshit that I didn't really particularly enjoy dealing with. It's like, back in the day, I've had a great publicist. There's no knock on her, but like, I feel like it's more direct to consumer, less like fluff, and like, here's the music. Like, do you like it? Do you not? And if great if you do, and then like, cool. In a month, here comes another song. And so,
right.
And I think we're gonna have enough music to release a new song pretty much give or take 1 month every month this year. Now, I also made a country record accidentally with my friend P-Tone, who is now with Brothers Osborne.
Uh-huh.
We got really bored during the pandemic, and he talks like this. He's like, "Hi, Bobby." He calls him Bobby. "Let's enter this Bush beer contest where we sing and make a video of the Bush Head for the Mountains of Bush song." And then Billy Ray Cyrus was the judge, and we got to Zoom. I mean, I'm really bored at this point. So we did this whole thing, got our video friend to make it, and we won this contest. They gave us money. And we've been friends forever, and we just started writing songs and made a record under this moniker of Refried Dreams. So I think after all my songs come out, I mean, it actually turned out pretty good. We're going to have to put that out too. He's been touring with Brothers Osborne. So I think my new mission is just to make as much music as possible.
I think that's the way to do it, because also let's not forget, like it's more affordable to make records than it ever has been before. I mean, you can do it in studios, and you can either do it yourself at home for a pretty good cost, or you can go do it at a studio, because studio prices have come down because so many people can do it at home, even if you're not. So I don't know. I just think like, you're responding at a certain point, and this is a crass way to put it, but there's no other way to put it. And I think I'm doing the same thing. You're just responding to like market incentives at a certain point. It's just like, well, it's cheaper to make music, easier to publish it. Is it easier for people to ignore it because there's so much stuff coming out? Maybe that's a drawback. But what else are you supposed to do besides take shots at the basket? I think releasing a really expensive album every 3 years, you'd have to be insane to do the 2007 plan like that.
It just doesn't work anymore. But you're right. It's less expensive, and we have 10 guys, I think, cutting all, including the engineer, all at the same time. We're cutting everything off the floor, so we could get 4 or 5 songs done in a day.
Right.
And you have to go in prepared and charted and arranged, but that's pretty. It's not cheap, but it's definitely cheaper than living in the studio for a month and being like, whatever. Yeah. So I agree. I think a lot about this, like, when it comes to like streaming TV, there's so many shows out and all these people are making such great content, and it's hard to keep up, but like, you just keep going, you just keep creating. And then like, eventually, hopefully, I don't really care if my song comes out tomorrow and finds somebody's ears in 2 years and they become a fan, as long as it just keeps growing. And then
yes.
I'm very much the slow burn of a career, which has been nice in some ways. I mean, I think I wanted to beat my head against the wall for maybe many years, but
yeah,
it's nice now because you just have, you're a boutique business, and that's okay. But
yep. And I think along with that plan, what you just mentioned, there's like a crucial caveat there. This only works if you're a lifer, basically. Like if you're in it and you're like, look, I'm going to be doing this for the next, unless I get hit by a truck tomorrow and I'm off this mortal coil, I'm going to continue to do this, right? So it really doesn't matter to me whether someone hears it tomorrow or 2 years from now, because I need one person to listen to it tomorrow. I need one person to listen to it 2 years from now, right? And so, but I think if it's more of like a get rich quick type of deal, well, then it does matter how many people listen to it tomorrow. You know what I mean? And all that.
Yeah. I've met all those get rich quick guys, man. There's a lot of them in Nashville. It's funny.
Yeah.
But like, I also like admire their gusto. They're like, I don't care, man. I'm just going to make this song, get the bus. But I was like, you realize there's an art to this, right? Like as quick as you go up, as you fall. But it's interesting, man. But you're right. I mean, I wrote a song yesterday, my buddy Darden Smith, and that's 90% sure it's going to be the start of our next record. And I don't know. That's the most exciting, which I don't know when we're going to do that. It'll probably be early next year at best. But it's that feeling of like, all right, we've got something new. And that's the best. A new song that you like is the best feeling still to me.
It is. And the craziest part about it is when that song shows up and when it's a good one or one that really could catch people's ears. The craziest part, the most surreal part about it is sitting there with it afterwards and you're like, 15 minutes ago, this didn't exist.
Yeah, man. That's, and you also have to not think about that while you're writing the song. You're like, I have to make this into creation. But no, you're right. I mean, I emailed like the lyrics to Darden yesterday. He's sending back to me. He's like, yeah, dude, I listened to this thing like 10 times yesterday afternoon. And I was like, I was doing the same thing,
Yeah.
And that it is like, I don't want to say it's like birthing a new thing in the world, but in a very, very small way, you've made it something that you've created that's yours. And it's just, it has so much potential, especially in the demo work tape form,
Yes. Yeah. And, effectively it cost you nothing. It's like, the idea of the cost of the stamp to send, to somebody, but it's just all it cost you was your time. And let's face it, man, none of our time is that valuable these days. So, that's not.
I think COVID taught us that.
Oh man. Well, dude, thank you so much for stopping by the show. I wish you the absolute best of luck with all these new records. Refried Dreams, I got to say, is one of my favorite band names that I've heard in a really long time. And I'm thrilled to hear all of it, man.
I appreciate it, Joe. This is fun, man. And I think I ran into you in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, like 5 years ago.
I can't believe it's been 5 years, but it's something like that. Yeah.
So it's really fun to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. Use promo code TWS, the initials of our podcast, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. Rob Baird's latest album is entitled Anthems, available everywhere music is sold or streamed. If before we meet again you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.